Unfortunately, that means that the war will probably be longer than anybody wants. As from this summer, I expect that the first F-16s will actually be delivered to Ukraine, and Ukraine is also on track for receiving the F-16s. You will decide, your military will decide how to use them. You can also target military objects necessary in self-defense that are on the other side of the border. If you stop today, then there will be no Ukraine tomorrow.
Kajsa, I was happy to say to our viewers that Netherlands are providing Ukraine with a lot of military support. And my real thanks to you and to your country for supporting Ukraine in these hard times.
It's what we have to do. There will be a new government in the Netherlands. So as a Minister of Defense, it is probably my last visit to Ukraine. But I will, of course, be the ambassador for Ukraine. And I will encourage the next government to continue with the support for Ukraine, as my government has done.
And that's exactly a question that I prepared to ask about the future. Despite you leave the government, we need support of Dutch people and Dutch government and further on. Are you sure that the next government will follow your work and your commitments to Ukraine?
In principle, yes. There will be a new coalition, but they have agreed on continuing the support for Ukraine. And I think what is also important is that my ministry has all kinds of contracts in place, budget reserved for continuing the support to Ukraine. And we are in different projects and coalitions like the F16 coalition, drone coalition, we're working on Patriots. So these projects are ongoing and they will continue.
We know well that a leading party in the new coalition is perceived as Ukraine skeptic, to say the least.
Yes.
To my view, it also harms our expectations. What makes you so optimistic towards future engagement?
Well, because I see that there is very broad political support in Parliament for supporting Ukraine, very broad support in our society. People feel very strongly about the war in Ukraine and that we have to show solidarity with Ukraine. And Ukraine is a partner country of the European Union, in NATO. So even if there is one right-wing populist party who is not that enthusiastic, I think the others will be able to force them to continue to support Ukraine.
I remember last time when we met in Kyiv in different location, roughly 10 months ago, you say that F-16s are almost ready and we just need to train Ukrainian pilots, and it would take 6 to 8 months. A lot more has passed.
Yes.
What is an obstacle?
I think there's not really an obstacle. I think we are on track now. We do this together with our partners, of course, with the Ukrainians that have to be trained, with Denmark, the Americans and other parties. And we are on a track which is really a fast track, much faster than anybody else has ever done the training in F-16s. And as from this summer, I expect that the first F-16s will actually be delivered to Ukraine, and from there on in a constant flow, by increasing the number and strengthening the Ukrainian Air Force.
So when?
I cannot be exact, but that's why I say this summer. And that is the path that we are on now. Denmark will be the first country to provide airframes, and we will follow after Denmark. But it's a joint effort.
It's also up to Ukrainian defense forces to prepare infrastructure.
Yes.
Is that already in place?
I think we are on track. Ukraine is on track. And that's very important because, like you said, it's about the pilots, it's about the maintenance personnel, it's about the airframes themselves and the equipment that they need, but it's also about the infrastructure in your country. But like I said, this is a partnership and it's a joint effort. And Ukraine is also on track for receiving the F-16s.
Of course, it's important to have these jets, but also it's important to use them, especially against targets, maybe on Russian soil, maybe in Russian airspace. Are we allowed to do that?
Yes, because once you will use the airframes, you will decide, your military will decide how to use them. You are fighting a war against an aggressor. It is a war in self-defense. And we have always said, as long as it's self-defense, so Article 51 of the UN Charter, and Ukraine works in compliance with international humanitarian law. You can also target military objects necessary in self-defense that are on the other side of the border. That is possible, but it's a military decision.
I just try to understand. We know for certain, and we have heard that from other Western partners that Ukraine is making self-defense, but some of partners do not allow us to use their weapons outside of Ukrainian territory. I don't realize fully as these F16s. Well, they are Dutch F16s. But they are produced by the United States.
Yes.
Who gives that permission?
Well, of course, there always has to be the permission of the United States for the donation itself.
And then for use?
And then we can, different countries have different perspectives, but I have urged also my partner countries to look at the result. If you restrain Ukraine in using certain weapons on only the Ukrainian side of the border, it sometimes means that Ukraine literally is fighting with one arm on its back. And that's dangerous. We don't want Russia to win, we want Ukraine to win. And we need to give you every possibility that you feel is necessary to win this war. And that can also be to engage on the other side of the border, because you are also attacked from that side of the border. So
no US restrictions would be applied to these planes for their use, for use of their weapons outside of Ukraine?
I can only decide on what we donate, and we donate the airplanes themselves.
And weapons?
And we will also donate certain weapons for them. And but it's complex, but the people in your Air Force, they understand it completely. I think we should not disclose everything. It is not necessary for the enemy to know all exact technical details, but all airframes that we donate will be up to date and will be what you need. And of course, there are all kinds of technicalities, but I think it's better not to disclose it.
Do you expect that provision of these jets would change a reality on the front line?
I don't think that the F-16s in themselves will be the big game changer in the war. But
really?
I do believe that the F-16s will make your Air Force and also your air defense much stronger. And when used in an integrated way, also with other capabilities, it will strengthen the position of Ukraine on the battlefield, absolutely. But there is never in a war, only one weapon that can change everything. I think it is always how you use the weapon. And we know that Ukrainian armed forces have been very creative and also used innovative weapons, for instance, on the Black Sea, and chased away the Russian Black Sea fleet. So it's a combination of this, and in the end, it is also about people.
So no expectation of air superiority of Ukraine after we get the jets?
Well, the jets will be phased in. You have to first use them to see the effect. And at some point, it will make the Air Force much stronger. And it might also create air superiority. But it's not something that can happen overnight when you get your first F-16. So if people expect that, I think we have to be a little bit more realistic.
Also in Ukraine, some people do discuss a possibility, and we continue asking our Western partners to close the sky, at least about the western part of Ukraine. That would allow us to open Lviv airport. That would allow Western partners to train Ukrainians right there. Is that feasible?
Amongst the partners of Ukraine, discussing what we need to do more or differently compared to what we have done so far. There has been a pushback from the Russian side. I think we have all seen that. Difficulties at the front, new opening of a new front, and continuous air raids, and also now with the gliding bombs. So that's very difficult. So we need to strengthen air defense. That's why we're also looking into donating more Patriots. And I know that Ukraine also would profit from more training in Ukraine, and I think that everything has to be on the table, and everything has to be discussed, and we will always find the right solution that works best for Ukraine.
Let me clarify. When you say everything has to be on the table, it also implies on possibility of use of Western jets that could fly with Western pilots from Western territory?
Well, no, I think at this point there is a war. Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. It's a war between those countries. But we provide support, military support, training, weapons, ammunition to Ukraine, and we have to see how we can be more effective in that way. And I think also by closing the sky could also be done by the Ukrainian Air Force.
Ukrainians only?
When we have a stronger Air Force. But never say never. So you never know in the future what is the right step to take.
Also, you've mentioned drones. That Netherlands are already helping Ukraine to get and to produce.
Yes.
And I know that here in Kyiv you are going to pledge more of support in these terms.
Yes, absolutely. We see, of course, the drones play a vital role in the war, both for reconnaissance but also attack drones. And we are going to invest around 60 million euros, 20 million through the fund in the drone coalition that's led by Latvia. And also we are going to invest in Ukrainian-produced drones, like sea drones. And we're going to invest in Dutch capabilities, but we try always to connect them to Ukraine industry. And in that way, so you profit from the drones, your companies can scale up, and we also learn from how you use the drones on the front line, because we also need to strengthen our armed forces and to learn from what is happening now with all these new techniques in real war situations.
By the way, it's also a reason for NATO to have Ukraine as an ally, because we would be very experienced in waging war.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But unfortunately, we don't see our Western partners to be ready even to invite Ukraine to NATO.
But you are already invited. Last year in Vilnius, we have all agreed that Ukraine is a partner to NATO. We have a NATO-Ukraine Council. And we've also agreed that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. So it's not a question whether Ukraine will become a member, but only when. So I think we are on track also on NATO issues.
Despite all the statements by Biden that he'd not see Ukraine in NATO?
Yeah, but I think that is the question on what steps do you need to take until you can actually become a member, like the European Union. You know you're a candidate country. You have to go through a certain procedure, but in the end you will be a member of the European Union.
For the NATO we have to win.
Well, that would certainly help, yeah.
And what is the victory for you?
Well, I think it's up to Ukraine to say what is victory. I think that's very important, because you are fighting the war. We recognize the borders. We support territorial integrity. We also support now the peace summit that is coming up in this week. And I think it is vital that Ukraine, in all its sovereignty, can decide for itself what is peace. It's not up to us to decide that.
Ukrainians have already decided. So all public surveys are very clear that Ukrainians do not allow any territorial concessions to take place. We need to restore our borders. Yeah. And unfortunately, there is a mood among some Western partners that, they would like to see Ukraine to calm down, to decrease demands.
Well, I don't know. My country has always said it's up to Ukraine to decide. We support them in resisting and fighting back to the Russian aggressor. And I don't see at this point from Russian side any attempt to start a dialogue or a discussion on peace. Whereas Ukraine has taken this initiative. So unfortunately that means that the war will probably be longer than anybody wants. But I would say it is Putin who could stop today. If you stop today, then there will be no Ukraine tomorrow.
Unfortunately, I don't expect it to happen neither this year nor next year. Don't you?
I think it is realistic to consider the possibility that this could go on for a long time, and we have to do everything we can to strengthen your armed forces and also your country to be able to resist the Russian aggression.
What can happen for Putin to lose?
Well, I think what needs to happen is that he sees that in the whole global world, in the global society, he has very few friends. And he depends now on support from a country like North Korea, North Korea is the most isolated country in the world, and we have to insist also countries like China that we cannot let this happen, that might makes right, and to also convince other countries in the world that it is in our interest, if we want to have a global order and peace and security, that Russia does have to take a step back. I think that is what is necessary, combined, of course, with the resolve that you were showing in Ukraine, of continuing for as long as it takes.
To be frank, I don't expect Putin to give up his idea. He is obsessed with that.
Yes, yeah. But at some point he sees how much he is losing, and losing many lives of young people. He has turned his economy into a war economy, which means that the economy functions, but only for that part. So people in Russia will also suffer from this war. So in the end, he's not winning very much. We must make sure that time does not play for Vladimir Putin, which means that we will have to show that our resolve is very strong and that we will continue to support Ukraine for as long as that is necessary.
I'm sure that Netherlands would do that.
Thank you.
And thank you for supporting Ukraine. Thank you for staying with our country.
Absolutely.